Hey there. If you've tuned in expecting a touching story about family values, healing, and all that other schmaltz they force feed you on daytime talk shows, I've got some bad news for you. Feel free to switch over to the cooking channel. At least there, the lies are delicious and served with a beautiful garnish of toasted almonds. This story is about something else. It's about how the perfectly manicured lawn of the American dream, smelling of fresh-cut grass, gasoline, and barbecue smoke, can hide not just a sinkhole to hell. That would be too dramatic. It can hide something even worse, another nauseatingly identical lawn. It all begins, as any self-respecting catastrophe should, with an illusion of complete, unshakable order. With a man named Mark, my stepfather, he called me his little princess. Yeah, I know. Right there, anyone with a working cliché detector should have been blaring, "Princess." God, that's not just a red flag. It was a whole 4th of July. Parade of red flags, complete with a marching band and a flyover. But I was 14, and my cynicism hadn't yet been forged in the crucible of total betrayal. I was, let's say, in its beta testing phase, and the sweetness, thick and cloying, felt real to me. He told me I was his whole world, and I believed him. Every single word. I soaked them up like a dry sponge soaks up, well, lies. With a desperate, almost animalistic greed. Down to the last drop, I believed him right up until the day I saw him, just 2 streets from our house, holding another girl's hand. A girl who looked back at me with his eyes. A girl who was essentially me, version 2.0, with factory settings and probably without all the accumulated bugs of teenage sarcasm and existential dread. So, yeah, this is a story about my stepfather, who was so good at playing the role of a father that he decided not to limit himself to one stage and performed in 2 theaters at once. Applause, curtain, and let's get this farce started. Speaking of farce, everyone has a family story that makes their hair stand on end, right? If you've got something similar you're not ashamed to share, feel free to drop it in the comments. It'd be interesting to read, just to know I'm not alone in this club. And while you're writing, I'll continue. Oh, and if you're not with us yet, now's the perfect time to fix that. This story is going to be a long one, so that subscribe button and the little bell next to it are your best friends to make sure you don't miss what happens next. For you to fully appreciate the depth of the fall, you first need to measure the height from which we flew. And let me tell you, we were flying in a private jet made of solid gold, piloted by an angel. Or so it seemed. Mark appeared in my and my mom's life like Mary Poppins, only without the silly umbrella and with a perfect credit score. My biological father had vanished shortly after I was born, leaving behind only a genetic predisposition to migraines and a vague, lingering memory of the smell of cheap beer and the squeak of an old, sagging couch. So the bar for a father figure in my life was set somewhere around the baseboards, covered in a layer of dust. And then, in walks Mark. He didn't just step over that bar. He built a skyscraper over it, with panoramic windows and a rooftop. Pool. He filled our quiet, slightly gray house with life and light. Before him, the house smelled of dust, old books, and my mother's anxieties. With him, it smelled of freshly brewed coffee in the mornings, cinnamon buns on the weekends, and something elusively dependable, like the scent of expensive cologne. With notes of sandalwood on the collar of his sweater, Mark never missed a birthday. Better yet, he threw themed parties. For my 13th, it was a Lord of the Rings party. He personally baked a cake in the shape of the Eye of Sauron, with an eyelid made of pliable marzipan and a pupil of melted caramel that glowed ominously when you lit the candle inside. He even crafted a broken narsil out of cardboard and foil, which we then ceremoniously reforged with scotch tape and superglue. My friends were ecstatic. I was ecstatic. Even my mom, Helen, who considered fantasy to be energetically heavy. Literature ran a finger over the marzipan eyelid and admitted it was very creative. He cooked on Sundays. Not just cooked, he put on culinary shows. I remember asking him once when I was still little, "Mark, can you make pancakes in the shape of dinosaurs?" He laughed his warm, infectious laugh that seemed to make the whole kitchen vibrate and the glasses in the cupboard rattle slightly, and replied, "For my princess, I can make the entire Mesozoic era." Today's menu features a stegosaurus with maple syrup and a pterodactyl with strawberries. He would grill steaks to a perfect medium rare while telling funny stories from his past life, which, as it later turned out, wasn't so past after all. Every single night when he tucked me in, he'd say, "I love you," and he didn't just toss the phrase out as he was leaving. He'd sit on the edge of the bed, his weight would dip the mattress, creating a cozy little hollow, look me straight in the eye and say it with such quiet, unwavering sincerity that the room actually seemed to grow warmer. Our walls were covered with photos and matching, light-colored frames. Here we are at Disneyland, Mark carrying me on his shoulders, and in the background, you can see the blurry face of some woman staring at us with a strange, wistful look. Here we are in Hawaii. He's teaching me to surf, and the salt water stings my eyes, but I'm laughing until my sides hurt. Here we are at home, just goofing around on the couch with our golden retriever, Barney. Of course, Barney was also Mark's idea. My mom, Helen, just blossomed. Before Mark, she was a woman who sighed too often, wore shapeless gray sweaters, and was into crystals for aura cleansing. With Mark's arrival, the crystals were moved to a back drawer, and her sighs were replaced by laughter, a bright, almost girlish sound I hadn't heard in years. She started wearing colorful dresses and even lipstick. He called her my queen, and she believed him just as blindly, just as completely as I did. We were his kingdom. A small, cozy one with a population of 2 people and 1 dog. We had no idea he had another satellite kingdom just a few blocks away, with an identical queen and, damn him, an identical princess. It was a completely ordinary Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday the universe creates by the millions to fill the void between a dreary Monday and a hopeful Wednesday. A warm autumn day, the air smelled of decaying leaves, exhaust fumes, and the promise of rain. I was walking home from school, listening to some indie band on my headphones. The vocalist suffering so beautifully, the way only 20-year-old boys with good hair can. My backpack held a C in algebra, and my mind was on plans to binge watch a series that evening. A thick, boring normality oozed from every moment. I always took the same route, past Mrs. Henderson's house with her army of malicious garden gnomes who seemed to follow me with their empty, painted eyes, past the old oak tree where someone had once carved a heart with initials, now swallowed by bark like an old scar, and past one particular house on the corner of Maple and Elm, a white 2-story house with a blue door and roses that were too pristine, almost plastic-looking. I'd never paid it much attention. It was just part of the scenery until that Tuesday, that day, for some reason, I took out my headphones. Maybe the song ended, or maybe my sixth sense, tired of being idle, finally decided to speak up, giving an invisible string a tug, and I heard a laugh, a familiar laugh, deep, rolling, with that recognizable rasp, the same one that filled our kitchen on Sundays during the dinosaur pancake making. I slowed my pace, my legs suddenly feeling like they were filled with lead. My heart, which had been lazily pumping blood moments before, suddenly decided it, was in a NASCAR race, and took off, hammering against my ribs and pounding in my temples. I looked toward the porch of that white house. He was standing there. Mark, my brain immediately, and helpfully offered up a dozen rational explanations. He's visiting a friend, helping a colleague move. He's a Jehovah's Witness now, A sudden career change. Anything. Any absurd version was better than the one unfolding before my eyes. He wasn't alone. A woman stood next to him. A blonde. About the same age as my mom. She was laughing, adjusting the collar of his shirt with an intimate, practiced care. And between them stood a little girl, about 10 or 11, with two light blonde pigtails that bounced with her every move. Mark leaned in and kissed the woman. Not a peck on the cheek, like you kiss an acquaintance. It was a kiss I had seen 1,000 times. The kiss he gave my mom before leaving for work. Brief, but full of tenderness and promise. And then he turned to the girl, scooped her up into his arms, and spun her around. She shrieked with delight, her head thrown back. The exact same way I used to shriek when I was younger. I froze. I was rooted to the sidewalk, feeling the solace of my sneakers stick to the pavement. Time stretched out like the melted caramel from that eye of Sauron cake. The sounds of the street vanished, replaced by a low hum in my ears and the thought of my own heart beating a frantic rhythm somewhere in my throat. The world narrowed to that single scene on the porch, as if I were looking through a long spyglass. Everything else, the trees, the passing cars, the gray sky, became a blurry, unimportant background. He set the girl down, and she glanced in my direction, casually, without any intent. And for a split second, our eyes met. She had his eyes, the same shade of gray-blue, the same shape. But it wasn't just that. There was something else about her, something painfully familiar. The way she tilted her head slightly to the side with curiosity. I did that. I had seen that exact gesture in hundreds of photos. It was like looking into a distorted mirror, one that showed you a few years younger and unspoiled, happier. Her face held no shadow of teenage doubt. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't rush over there with accusations. I did what any organism does when faced with something incomprehensible and terrifying. I pretended I wasn't there. I turned around slowly, as if in a dream, and started walking in the opposite direction. I don't remember how I got home. My legs seemed to carry me on autopilot while my brain desperately tried to reboot after a critical system failure. Error 404. Family not found. The houses I passed every day suddenly looked like cardboard stage props. Cheerful Mr. Green, watering his hydrangeas, now looked like an actor overacting the part of the happy neighbor. The whole world had become one big theater, and I was the only one who suddenly realized it was all a performance. When I walked through our front door, Mark wasn't back yet. The house greeted me with its usual silence and the scent of my mom's perfume. I looked at the coat rack in the hall where his jacket hung. It looked foreign, a piece of evidence. My mom came out of the living room and asked why I was so pale, as if I'd seen a ghost. I lied and said I was stressed about a test. It was the first of many, many drops of lies that would eventually fill an ocean. The words were hard to get out. They stuck in my throat like dry bread. That evening, when Mark came home, he was his usual self. Smiling, attentive, smelling of the office and confidence. He walked in, the keys jingling in the lock, and his voice, so familiar and now so fake, echoed through the house. He hugged me, kissed the top of my head, and asked in his warm, unsuspecting voice, "How's it going, princess?" That word, princess, before it had been a warm blanket. Now, it burned me like a branding iron. I looked up at him, into his gray, kind, lying eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't answer. I just nodded, feeling the muscles in my face harden into a mask. And inside me, something cracked, quietly, almost silently. Like the first ice of spring. A thin, barely noticeable fissure, from which a web of fractures spread across my entire world. For the next few days, I lived in a fog, in a world that had suddenly split into two layers. On top was the familiar reality: breakfast, school, homework. And underneath was another dark, viscous reality where my stepfather twirled another girl in his arms. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, a hallucination, a mass hypnosis involving a blonde woman and a child. But the image of that girl with his eyes was stuck in my head like a splinter under a nail. Hiding it from my mom was weird. It was like trying to hide an elephant in your bedroom. You try to act normal, but the elephant keeps bumping into things, breathing loudly, and leaving giant piles of dot dot. Well, you get it. My secret was my elephant. I named him Norman. Every time at dinner, when Mark would talk about his day, I could feel Norman sighing heavily behind me. I became quiet, jumpy. My mom wrote it off as a difficult age. Mark would ask with concern if someone at school was bothering me. Oh, the irony. 10 points to Gryffindor. On the third day, I realized that self-deception was a dead end. I needed facts, proof. I transformed from a regular 14-year-old girl into a private investigator. My bedroom became my headquarters. My school planner became my surveillance log, and I needed a partner. I called Zara my best friend. She answered with her usual drama: Resistance headquarters, Agent Raven speaking. What's the password? I sighed wearily. Zara, it's me. The password was Pineapple Express, and we agreed to change it after your little brother ate the note. Details, details, she chirped. What's up? You sound like you just saw a ghost. Worse, I saw my stepfather. I told her everything. She was silent for a few seconds, processing. I expected anything: shock, sympathy, disbelief. But she replied in a thrilled whisper, no way. He's a secret agent. CIA Mossad. That other family is his cover. The girl isn't his daughter. She's the key to the nuclear codes. Sasha, we're on the verge of the biggest expose since Watergate. I cut her fantasy short. Zara, he's a regional sales manager for a plumbing supply company. The most dangerous. Part of his job is the risk of dropping a toilet on his foot. The perfect cover. She insisted. Despite her initial theories, Zara proved to be an invaluable ally. We named our mission Operation Double Agent Dad. Our field excursions were worthy of their own sitcom. The very first stack out was a disaster. Zara and I, dressed in all black, our faces smeared with dirt for camouflage, hid in the bushes across from the house. We even brought walkie-talkies. We'd bought at a toy store. Agent Owl, this is Raven, come in. Do you have eyes on the target? I hissed into the radio. All I see is your stupid hat and a colony of ants that seem to be colonizing my jeans. My skin is so itchy. Over, Zara's voice crackled back. Suddenly, the lawn's automatic sprinkler system roared to life, drenching us. We scrambled out of there, soaked and muddy, right in front of Mrs. Higgins, the local gossip queen who was out walking her poodle. The next day, a rumor spread through the neighborhood that Zara and I had tried to steal her plastic lawn flamingo. But we didn't give up. We got smarter. We conducted our surveillance from a safe distance, using her dad's bird-watching binoculars. And a pattern began to emerge. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. On these days, Mark would work late, or go on an overnight fishing trip. In reality, he was driving to Maple Street. We saw him bring them groceries. We saw him play catch with the girl in the yard. We saw him fix their porch. He was living the exact same life there as he was with us, just on a different schedule. I started a special notebook. It had kittens on the cover. Inside, ignoring the cute fur balls, I drew diagrams and charts. On one page, Family A, us. On the other, Family B, them. Family A, Sunday pancakes. Favorite movie, Star Wars. Vacation, Hawaii. Pet, Barney. The dog, Family B. Saturday, grilled burgers. Favorite movie, judging by the girl's t-shirt, Frozen. Vacation, Disneyland. Pet an orange cat we saw in the window. He wasn't just cheating. He was diversifying. He had a portfolio of family assets. He wasn't just a liar. He was a time management genius. One evening, when he had left again on business, I snuck into his office. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it could be heard in the next room. The room smelled of leather, wood, and his cologne. I carefully opened his desk drawer. Bills, contracts, promotional brochures for toilets. And underneath a stack of plumbing paperwork was a child's drawing. It showed a crudely drawn man, a son, and a house. A child's handwriting underneath read, "To the best daddy in the world, from your Emily." Emily, that was her name. I picked up the drawing. The paper was thin, almost translucent against the light. I could feel the waxy texture of the crayon lines with my fingertips. This wasn't a theory anymore. It wasn't a spy game. It was real, cold, undeniable, and drawn in wax crayon. In that moment, I stopped being a detective. I became the daughter of a man who had another daughter. And I had no idea what to do with that. In the 21st century, you don't need to hire a private eye and a dusty trench coat to ruin someone's life. All you need is an internet connection and a bit of free time. Social media isn't just a vanity fair. It's also a vast, publicly accessible archive of human stupidity. And Mark, for all his brilliant planning, turned out to be surprisingly stupid. My investigation moved into the digital phase. Operation Double Agent Dad now had a cyber division consisting of me and my old laptop. I started going through the friends lists of his friends. It's like going down a rabbit hole, only instead of the Mad Hatter, you risk stumbling upon photos of your classmates from prom. After a few hours of this digital archaeology, my eyes watering from the screens, glare, I found her, that woman, the blonde from the porch. Her name was Catherine, her profile was public. Oh, the sweet carelessness. It was a portal to an alternate universe. Her page was a mirror image of my mom's, just in a different color scheme. Photos from picnics. Posts about how proud she was of her daughter. Selfies with friends, and there it was, the jackpot. A photo posted 3 weeks ago. It showed Catherine, the girl Emily, and Mark. All three of them were smiling at the camera in front of some amusement park. Mark had his arms around both of them. He looked just as happy and relaxed as he did in our family photos. The caption read, "Another beautiful day with my amazing family." I stared at the screen. My heart didn't pound. It didn't skip a beat. It just stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. This was digital evidence, certified by likes and comments. I started scrolling through the comments. What a beautiful couple. Emily looks so much like you, Catherine. And the most devastating, one from a woman who, based on her profile, was Catherine's mother. Mark, you're the best husband and father my daughter could have ever dreamed of. I took a screenshot, then another, and another. I saved them in a separate folder on my desktop that I named Pandora's Box. But the real gut punch was yet to come. I scrolled further down Catherine's wall, back a few months, and I found a post from March 15th. "Happy birthday to my little princess. Emily, you're 10. I can't believe how fast you're growing. Daddy loves you so much." The post was published from Mark's account. He had tagged her in it, March 15th. My birthday is March 12th. He had celebrated her birthday 3 days after mine. He hadn't even bothered to be original with the pet name, Princess. He used the exact same word. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was lazy, assembly line work. As if he had found the successful template for fatherly love and was just copying and pasting it for different projects, only changing the recipient's name. A wave of strange, cold anger washed over me. It wasn't pain anymore. It was an insult. He thought we were so interchangeable that he couldn't even be bothered to come up with different terms of endearment for us. We were like two identical phone models he was using with different SIM cards. I closed the laptop with a quiet click. The room was silent, but a funereal orchestra was raging in my head. I no longer had any doubts. I was no longer afraid. I knew I had to tell my mom everything. The illusion was shattered for good. All that was left was to pick up the pieces and try not to get cut.